3,000 years ago, one of the ancient world's most powerful empires vanished without a trace. The Hittites, rulers of a vast Bronze Age kingdom that rivaled Egypt and Babylon, simply disappeared from history, leaving behind only whispers in crumbling clay tablets and enigmatic artifacts buried beneath the dust of time. But these fragments of their world hold secrets far more astonishing than anyone ever imagined. What if I told you that a single clay tablet could rewrite our understanding of diplomacy, or that a rusted dagger might reveal the fate of a forgotten prince? Hidden within these relics are clues to a civilization so advanced, so mysterious, that even today, scholars are piecing together their story like detectives solving an ancient cold case. Imagine standing in a sun-baked ruin, your fingers brushing against a stone carved with strange symbols that once struck fear into the hearts of pharaohs. The Hittites weren't just warriors, they were master lawmakers, innovators, and even pioneers of the world's first peace treaty. Yet for centuries, their legacy was lost, buried under layers of myth and misunderstanding. That is, until these 25 artifacts surfaced, each one a puzzle piece in a grand historical mystery. Some were stumbled upon by chance, a farmer's plow hitting a glint of bronze, a child playing in the dirt unearthing a face frozen in terracotta. Others were hunted down by archaeologists deciphering clues from ancient texts. But every single one of them has changed the way we see this vanished empire. This isn't just a story about broken pottery or faded inscriptions. It's about unlocking the echoes of a people who shaped the course of history, then vanished into shadow. How did a civilization so mighty collapse so completely? What dark truths lie hidden in their art, their weapons, even their curses? As we unravel the secrets of these 25 artifacts, you'll witness everything from royal scandals etched in cuneiform to chilling prophecies that came true centuries later. So lean in close, because the Hittites may be gone, but their story is far from over. And what we've discovered about them, well, it might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. The first clue to the Hittites' lost grandeur stands frozen in stone, two massive lion statues flanking what was once the grand entrance to their capital. This is the Lion Gate of Hattusa, carved from solid rock with such precision that even after 3,000 years, their snarling faces still radiate raw power. When German archaeologists uncovered them in 1906, they weren't just finding statues, they were staring into the eyes of an empire. These lions weren't mere decorations. They were psychological warfare, a warning carved in limestone to any enemy approaching the city. Towering above all who passed beneath them, their bulging eyes and bared fangs sent a clear message: you are entering the domain of kings. But what's truly astonishing isn't just their intimidation factor, it's how they were made. The Hittites didn't just stack stones, they shaped them with near magical skill. Each lion was carved from a single block, their manes flowing in intricate detail, their muscular bodies defying the limits of Bronze Age tools. The discovery shattered everything experts thought they knew about ancient architecture. Before the Lion Gate, scholars assumed only the Egyptians or Mesopotamians could achieve such craftsmanship. But here was proof that the Hittites had mastered advanced masonry centuries earlier than anyone realized. Perfectly fitted stones without mortar, joints so tight you couldn't slip a blade between them. Even more fascinating, the lions aren't identical. One slightly taller, its posture more aggressive, perhaps a deliberate choice to show that Hittite power wasn't just strong but unpredictable. And then there's the mystery: no one talks about the missing pieces. The lions' bodies are intact, but their heads bear strange, weathered marks. Some say it's erosion, others argue it's the work of invaders trying to erase the city's spirit. Whatever the truth, these silent sentinels hold more than history. They hold the unshakable pride of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. Deep in the heart of Anatolia, where jagged cliffs rise like petrified giants, lies one of the Hittites' most haunting creations, the Yazılıkaya rock sanctuary. This isn't just a temple carved into stone, it's a celestial fingerprint, a sacred meeting place between earth and sky. Picture two natural chambers, their walls alive with over 90 figures, gods with pointed hats, kings frozen mid-stride, even a massive sword-wielding storm god towering 12 feet tall. But here's what sends chills down archaeologists' spines. These aren't random carvings. They're a Bronze Age astronomical code. Step inside the larger chamber at dawn during the winter solstice, and you'll witness magic. Sunlight slants through the narrow opening, illuminating a procession of underworld deities, as if the Hittites etched the very moment daylight begins reclaiming the year from darkness. The summer solstice, that's when the sun's rays kiss the storm god's spear, a divine signal for the harvest. This precision wasn't coincidence. The sanctuary's layout mirrors the Hittite cosmos, with gods grouped by their realms, sky deities to the left, earth gods to the right, mirroring their belief in a universe held in perfect balance. Yet for all its celestial harmony, Yazılıkaya is riddled with enigmas. Why do some gods carry curved swords never found in Hittite battle sites? Why does the procession culminate in a mysterious embrace between the king and the chief deity? A scene some interpret as a royal coronation, others as a secret funerary rite. The most spine-tingling theory comes from a faded cuneiform tablet found nearby, hinting this was more than a temple. It might have been a gate, a place where living rulers communed with dead ancestors during solstice rituals, their whispers carried on the wind through the sanctuary's echoing chambers. The discovery of Yazılıkaya didn't just add another temple to the archaeological map. It shattered the old view of Hittite religion as crude idol worship. These reliefs reveal theologians who saw time itself as sacred, who encoded their myths into the very movement of the stars, and perhaps most haunting of all, the sanctuary was never finished. Half-carved figures trail off into blank rock, as if the artisans fled mid-chisel when the empire crumbled. It's a ghostly reminder that even the gods couldn't save the Hittites when their final hour came. Buried beneath the ruins of Hattusa, a trove of bronze tablets whispered secrets that would overturn everything historians knew about ancient governance. The Bogaskuri tablets, thousands of them, aren't just bureaucratic records. They're the sprawling paper trail of an empire that ran on paperwork. Imagine a civilization where every land dispute, every temple offering, even every royal headache was meticulously logged in cuneiform. These weren't dry administrative notes. They were the lifeblood of a society that believed order could be etched into clay. One tablet lists the exact number of sheep sacrificed during a single festival, 496. Another details the wages of a temple scribe down to the smallest measure of grain. But the real revelation, the Hittites didn't just keep records, they archived them. Shelves of tablets were organized by topic, date, and even cross-referenced with summaries, proving they'd invented something startlingly modern, a filing system. Then there's the tablet that rewrote history, the Treaty of Kadesh. Drafted in 1259 BCE, this wasn't just a truce between the Hittites and Egypt after decades of war. It was humanity's first surviving peace treaty, a document so revolutionary its echoes still shape diplomacy today. The terms, mutual defense pacts, prisoner exchanges, even a clause declaring neither side would harbor the other's fugitives. But what truly stuns scholars is how unceremonial it reads. This wasn't vague royal boasting, it's precise, practical, almost legalistic. Ramses Roman II and Hattusili Roman III didn't just end a war, they built a framework for coexistence, acknowledging each other as equals despite years of bloodshed. The treaty's survival is a miracle. Stamped with both kings' seals, copies were sent to temples across both empires. The version found at Hattusa, engraved in Akkadian, the diplomatic lingua franca, proves the Hittites didn't just dominate through force. They mastered the art of soft power, using treaties like chess moves to secure alliances from Babylon to Mycenae. Even more astonishing, the treaty worked. Peace held for generations, with royal marriages sealing the deal. A Hittite princess's letters to Ramses, discovered in Egypt, reveal her homesickness for the land of Hatti. Proof these weren't just cold political agreements, but pacts between real people. Together, these tablets demolish the stereotype of the Hittites as brute conquerors. The bureaucracy of Boghazköy shows a civilization obsessed with transparency, where even kings submitted to audits. The Treaty of Kadesh reveals diplomats who understood that lasting power came from ink, not just iron. And perhaps most remarkably, we're only reading these words today because the Hittites baked their clay records during invasions, turning mundane documents into immortal time capsules. When their world burned, the fire that should have erased them instead hardened their stories into permanence. Among the treasures unearthed from Hattusa's royal archives, one artifact stands out not for its size, but for the sheer weight of history pressed into its surface: the seal of King Suppiluliuma I. This tiny cylinder of hematite, barely the length of a thumb, carries carvings so fine they had to be magnified to be fully appreciated. Roll it across wet clay, and it reveals a scene fit for an epic: the king standing triumphant over two defeated foes, his foot planted firmly on their backs. But this isn't just royal propaganda, it's a geopolitical bombshell. The moment archaeologists deciphered the cuneiform encircling the seal, the pieces of a forgotten conflict snapped into place. The inscription names Suppiluliuma as the great king, beloved of the storm god, but it's the identities of the prostrate figures that sent shockwaves through academia. One wears the distinctive headdress of a Mitanni prince, the other bears the crook and flail symbol of Egypt. Here was irrefutable proof that the Hittites hadn't just skirmished with these empires, they'd humiliated them on the battlefield. What makes this seal revolutionary isn't just its artwork, it's the paper trail it corroborated. For years, scholars had debated a cryptic letter found in Egypt's Amarna archives, where a widowed queen, likely Ankhesenamun, Tutankhamun's wife, begged the Hittites to send a prince to marry her, desperate to avoid wedding a servant. The seal's discovery proved Suppiluliuma was the king who risked sending his son, a fateful decision that ended in the prince's murder and triggered a Hittite-Egyptian war. But the true genius of this artifact lies in its dual purpose. Beyond asserting dominance, the seal's intricate knotwork pattern served as an unforgeable signature. Every treaty, every land grant bore this mark, and the tiniest flaw in the impression would reveal a forgery. Some tablets even show where scribes tested the seal's imprint before applying it, an ancient form of authentication. Perhaps most poignant is how this symbol of invincibility outlasted the hands that held it. When Suppiluliuma died, likely from a plague brought back by prisoners of war, his seal was ritually killed, a deep gouge carved across its surface to prevent misuse. Yet even defaced, it speaks volumes about a king whose ambition stretched from Anatolia to the Nile, and whose legacy was literally set in stone. Standing guard at the southern gates of Hattusa, the great Sphinx Gate statue defies expectations, a creature with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the serene face of a Hittite queen. When German archaeologist Hugo Winkler's team uncovered it in 1915, they didn't just find a relic, they found a cultural paradox. Here was proof that the Hittites, far from being isolated warriors of the Anatolian highlands, were master synthesizers of ancient traditions. The statue's Assyrian-style wings and Egyptian-inspired headdress weren't borrowed, they were reimagined, fused with distinctly Hittite symbols to create something entirely new. This wasn't mere decoration. The Sphinx served as both protector and propagandist, its hybrid form broadcasting a deliberate message. The Hittite Empire absorbed the strengths of its neighbors while retaining its own identity. Unlike Egyptian sphinxes, which typically faced outward to intimidate invaders, the Hattusa Sphinx turns inward, watching over the city's own people. Scholars believe it embodied the goddess Inara, a deity who mediated between the human and divine realms, a perfect metaphor for the Hittites' own role as cultural intermediaries. The statue's excavation shattered long-held myths about Bronze Age isolation. Previously, historians assumed civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia developed in splendid separation. But the Sphinx's stylistic cocktail Assyrian feathers, Hittite facial features, Hurrian artistic flourishes proved otherwise. Even more telling, the limestone used wasn't local. Isotope analysis revealed it was quarried near Aleppo, Syria, meaning this 20-ton masterpiece was hauled over 300 miles through mountainous terrain. That logistical feat alone speaks volumes about the Hittites' far-reaching trade networks. Yet the Sphinx guards one final secret. When Winkler's team found it, the statue lay toppled, its face deliberately smashed, likely during the city's violent collapse around 1200 BC. But the destroyers missed something crucial. On the statue's base, barely visible beneath the debris, was an inscription in Luwian hieroglyphs. "Whoever erases my name, may the storm god erase theirs." It's a chilling reminder that even in ruin, the Hittites knew their art would outlast them. Today, as the reconstructed Sphinx gazes once more over Hattusa's gates, it challenges us to see ancient civilizations not as separate islands, but as a vast, interconnected web, with the Hittites at its vibrant center. High above Hattusa's temples, gleaming from palace walls and royal seals, the Hittite sun disk blazed as more than just a symbol. It was a celestial covenant. Crafted from hammered bronze with radiating spokes like sunbeams frozen in metal, this sacred emblem didn't merely represent a deity, it channeled one. Archaeologists found these discs positioned deliberately to catch the first and last light of day, transforming ordinary sunrise into a divine spectacle. But here's what makes it extraordinary. This wasn't just a Hittite tradition. The disc's design echoes across Indo-European cultures, from the Norse Sol to the Vedic Surya, revealing a shared lineage of sun worship stretching back to their Proto-Indo-European ancestors. The Hittites called their sun goddess Arina, queen of the land of Hatti, but her disc often bore a striking addition, a pair of wings. Some scholars argue these symbolized protection, like a mother bird shielding her nest. Others see them as evidence of cultural exchange with Egypt's winged sun discs. Yet the Hittite version had a twist. The wings curved downward, as if the heavens themselves were embracing the earth. Now, contrast this radiant symbol with the brutal elegance of Tarhana's axe. Recovered from a shrine near the capital, this weapon wasn't meant for battle. Its blade was too ornate, its edge unmarked by combat. Instead, it served as a divine conduit. When priests raised it during storms, they weren't just honoring the god of thunder. They were performing sympathetic magic, mimicking Tarhana's mythical strikes that split the sky. The axe's double-headed design held deeper meaning to one side for destruction, shattering enemy cities like he shattered clouds, the other for fertility, releasing life-giving rain. Ritual texts describe how kings would anoint these axes with sacred oils, then strike ceremonial stones to awaken the god's power. The true revelation came when archaeologists noticed something peculiar. Sun discs and storm god axes frequently appeared together. A relief at Alaca Höyük shows Tarhana holding his axe aloft beneath a winged sun, while tablets describe solstice ceremonies where priests would position the disc to cast shadows along axe-carved ley lines in temple floors. This interplay wasn't coincidence, it reflected the Hittites' view of cosmic balance. The sun governed order, law, and the visible world. The storm god embodied chaos, raw power, and the unseen forces that could upend kingdoms. Together, they mirrored the Hittite belief that civilization thrived not by suppressing nature's fury, but by harmonizing with it. Parallels emerge across continents. In Vedic rituals, the god Indra wields a lightning axe, the Vajra, while Surya's chariot carries the sun. Norse myths tell of Thor's hammer splitting clouds as Sol's chariot races overhead. Even the Greeks fused these ideas, Zeus's thunderbolts paired with Helios's radiant crown. But the Hittites may have been the first to codify this duality into state religion. A treaty tablet from 1200 BC invokes both deities as witnesses, binding foreign kings under the eyes of the sun and the strike of the storm. What makes these artifacts revolutionary isn't just their spiritual role. It's how they redefine Hittite innovation. They didn't merely borrow symbols, they remixed them into a theological language that resonated from Anatolia to India. The sun disk's alloys contained tin from Afghanistan. The axe's haft was crafted from Balkan oak, yet their meaning was unmistakably Hittite. When invaders finally sacked Hattusa, they smashed temples and toppled statues, but they couldn't break the logic of these symbols. Centuries later, Roman legionaries would march under eagle standards bearing uncanny resemblance to Arina's disc, while Tahana's axe evolved into the double-headed labyrinths of Minoan palaces. The mediums changed, but the message endured. Power flows where heaven and earth collide. Buried beneath a royal tomb in Alaca Höyük, a golden stag glimmered in the torchlight, not as a mere decoration, but as a bridge between worlds. This exquisite statuette, crafted over 4,000 years ago, predates the Hittite Empire by centuries, yet its legacy shaped their civilization in ways no one expected. Standing just over a foot tall, the stag's antlers stretched toward the heavens like a skeletal tree, its body forged from electrum, a shimmering alloy of gold and silver that seemed to capture moonlight itself. But what was its purpose? Archaeologists are still divided. Some argue it topped a ceremonial standard carried into battle to invoke divine protection. Others point to the charred bones found nearby, suggesting it was a sacrificial offering, its molten metal poured as a libation to ancient gods. The craftsmanship alone tells a story of lost mastery. Unlike later Hittite works that favored bold, geometric lines, the stag's sinews and muscles ripple with lifelike precision. Microscopic analysis reveals tool marks finer than a human hair, perhaps made with magnifying lenses or polished obsidian blades. Even more astonishing, the antlers aren't solid. They're hollow tubes engineered to sway with the wind or the tremors of ritual drums, creating an eerie, animating effect. This wasn't just metalwork, it was kinetic art designed to blur the line between object and deity. Yet the stag's true revolution lies in its afterlife. When the Hittites conquered this region, they didn't discard the older Hatchan culture, they absorbed its genius. Excavations at Hattusa uncovered later Hittite artifacts echoing the stag's techniques. Ceremonial cups with the same hollow core construction, gold plaques mimicking its textured hide. A broken tablet even references a dancing stag ritual, where priests wore antlered masks during solstice ceremonies. The connection, carbon dating, shows the original stag was venerated for generations before being buried, becoming a prototype for Hittite sacred objects. But here's the twist that rewrites art history. The stag's alloy contains trace copper from Cyprus, and its design shares uncanny parallels with stag idols found as far as the Caucasus. That means this wasn't just a local cult object. It was part of a pan-Anatolian spiritual network, a shared visual language that the Hittites later weaponized into imperial iconography. When they depicted their gods standing on stag motifs in temple reliefs, they weren't inventing a new tradition, they were claiming an ancient one. The final enigma lies in its burial. The stag was interred with 13 other figures, bulls, deer, and abstract sun discs, all carefully arranged to point north toward the pole star. Was this a cosmic map guiding souls to the afterlife? A votive tableau to recalibrate the heavens? We may never know. But when a Hittite king centuries later ordered his own grave goods to mirror this alignment, he proved one thing: some symbols are too powerful to stay buried. The Anandic vase didn't emerge from careful excavation, it burst into history with the chaotic clatter of a bulldozer's blade. In 1965, workers widening a road near Ankara struck something that didn't shatter like ordinary rock. When they pulled the fragments from the earth, they found themselves staring at a puzzle in terracotta. A four-handled vessel nearly 3 feet tall, its surface alive with figures frozen mid-celebration. Pieced together, the scenes revealed a Hittite festival so vivid, it felt like stepping through a time portal. At first glance, the vase seems to depict simple revelry, musicians blowing horns, acrobats tumbling, attendants carrying baskets of fruit. But look closer and you'll spot the subtle codes of a rigid social order. The highest-ranking figures stand elevated on platforms, their elaborate headdresses marking them as priests or nobles, while servants kneel to offer them chalices. One particularly striking panel shows a woman, possibly a queen or high priestess, holding a cup to her lips, while another figure pours from a vessel identical to the enigmatic vase itself. This wasn't just artistry, it was anthropology in clay, documenting who drank, how much, and in what order, the beverage flowing so freely in these scenes. Scholars believe it's wiana, a Hittite fermented drink likely made from grapes or barley. Tablets from Hattusa describe its use in rituals where intoxication wasn't mere indulgence, it was sacred communion. Priests drank to channel deities, kings to affirm treaties, and the vase's imagery suggests even commoners might have been allowed limited participation during festivals. But the hierarchy was strict. The size of each figure's cup corresponds to their status, with the elites holding goblets dwarfing those of the lower ranks. What makes the enigmatic vase revolutionary isn't just its snapshot of Bronze Age happy hour. It captures a society where alcohol was infrastructure. The same roadworks that unearthed it likely follow an ancient Hittite trade route, one that transported not just goods but cultural practices. Chemical residue inside similar vessels found across Anatolia matches traces of honey, thyme, and juniper, proving the Hittites weren't just drinking, they were experimenting with flavors like master brewers. Most poignant are the scenes modern eyes might overlook. A small child reaching for a cup being gently restrained, an elderly figure watered down their wine with a mixing bowl. These human moments, preserved in fired clay, remind us that behind the empire's martial reputation were real people, laughing, toasting, and occasionally overindulging. When the vase was new, its images would have glowed in vibrant pigments now lost to time. Yet even in faded terracotta, it offers something rare, not just how the Hittites ruled, but how they lived. Carved into a sheer cliff face along the ancient trade route through Turkey's Karabul Pass, a lone warrior stands frozen in stone, his gaze locked on a horizon he's guarded for over 3,000 years. The Karabul rock relief, a life-sized figure clutching a spear and bow, wasn't meant to blend in. Towering 15 feet above the valley floor, it forced every traveler to look up, a billboard of Bronze Age power in a landscape without borders. But who does this armored figure represent? The debate began the moment early explorers spotted it in the 1800s. Some argued it depicted King Tarkasnawa of Mera, a vassal ruler mentioned in Hittite texts. Others saw a local dynast, his name lost to time but his authority stamped indelibly into the rock. The truth, this isn't just a portrait, it's a geopolitical chess move. The warrior's attire holds tantalizing clues. His conical helmet mirrors those worn by Hittite elites in capital reliefs, but the curved sword at his waist resembles weapons found in western Anatolia, far from Hattusa's heartland. His belt bears a cryptic Luwian inscription once thought to name the figure, now believed to warn invaders. Whoever harms this image, may the storm god strike them down. This blending of Hittite and local motifs wasn't accidental. Recent laser scans revealed the carving was reworked over generations, its details subtly updated as power shifted, proof that rock could be as fluid as politics. Location was everything. The Karabul Pass wasn't just a road, it was the Bronze Age equivalent of a choke point on the global trade map. Caravans carrying Baltic amber, Afghan tin, and Egyptian glass all funneled through this narrow valley. By placing his image here, the warrior's patron didn't just claim land, he controlled perception. travelers from Mesopotamia would recognize the pose from their own victory stelae, while Aegean merchants saw echoes of Mycenaean warlords. It was a masterpiece of psychological branding, a single image speaking multiple cultural languages. The relief's discovery forced historians to redraw maps. Before Karabal, Hittite influence was thought to stop at the Kızılırmak River, but here, nearly 200 miles beyond that boundary, stood incontrovertible proof of their reach. Satellite imaging later revealed something astonishing. The carving aligns perfectly with solstice sunrise, casting the warrior's shadow across the pass like a sundial at midsummer. Combine that with cuneiform records found in Hattusa detailing watchposts along western frontiers, and a pattern emerges. The Hittites didn't just conquer territory, they curated it. Perhaps most telling is what's missing. Unlike royal monuments in the capital, there's no depiction of subjugated enemies beneath the warrior's feet. This wasn't a boast of domination, but a statement of coexistence. The local ruler, whether Tarkasnawa or another, knew his power depended on collaboration, not just coercion. That nuance makes Karabal more than art. It's a frozen moment in the messy reality of empire, where stone declarations had to bend to the winds of trade, diplomacy, and distant mountains that refused to be tamed. Deep in the ruins of Şapanuva, a provincial capital far from Hattusa's grandeur, archaeologists uncovered a bureaucratic bombshell, a cache of 3,000 cuneiform tablets that shattered every assumption about how the Hittite Empire actually functioned. These weren't dry inventories or temple records. They were the day-to-day pulse of an administration run not just by kings, but by queens who wielded power with startling autonomy. At the heart of this archive lies Queen Pujuhepa's correspondence, letters so fiercely intelligent, so politically shrewd, they forced historians to rewrite the entire narrative of women's roles in the ancient Near East. Picture this, a clay tablet bearing Pujuhepa's personal seal, addressed to Ramses Roman II of Egypt. While other empires relegated royal women to the shadows, here was a Hittite queen negotiating marriages, drafting treaties, and even chastising the pharaoh for sending substandard gifts. "Why have you sent only one necklace for my daughter?" one missive demands. Is this how Egypt honors its allies? The tone isn't that of a passive consort, it's a head of state holding a superpower accountable. Another letter reveals her mediating a border dispute with the Assyrians, referring to military deployments and supply chains with the precision of a seasoned general. But Pujuhepa wasn't an exception, she was the apex of a system. The Şapanuva tablets expose a network of female administrators, from regional governors' wives who supervised grain distribution to priestesses who controlled temple treasuries. One remarkable text lists 37 women by name: scribes, judges, even what scholars now call diplomatic liaisons, all reporting directly to the queen. The archive's real revolution isn't just that women held power, but how seamlessly that power was institutionalized. Land deeds show properties jointly registered to husbands and wives. Legal disputes record women testifying as equals, and ration lists indicate female workers receiving equal pay for equal labor. The clay doesn't lie. Where Babylonian or Assyrian records might mention women only as brides or captives, these tablets document them as active participants in everything from tax collection to international espionage. A particularly juicy scroll details a spy named Malnigel, who infiltrated a Hurrian court by posing as a weaver. Her reports back to Şapanuva filled with coded messages about troop movements hidden in weaving patterns. What makes this archive earth-shaking isn't merely its feminist subtext. It's the chilling paper trail of a collapsing empire. The later tablets grow increasingly desperate, Pujuhepa's letters pleading for reinforcements as drought and rebellion spread, inventories showing weapon stockpiles dwindling to nothing. Yet even in crisis, the system held. One of the final documents is a coldly bureaucratic death notice for a soldier, processed with full pension for his widow, a testament to governance that outlasted glory. Modern parallels leap from the clay. The Hittites didn't just tolerate female leadership, they structured their bureaucracy to require it. Pujuhepa's seal appears on documents decades after her husband's death, proving her authority wasn't derivative but inherent. When invaders finally burned Shapanuva, they unknowingly preserved history's first known glass ceiling not as a barrier, but as a threshold the Hittite queens had already shattered. At the crossroads of empires where the Euphrates River bends like an ancient serpent, the walls of Carchemish whisper in two lost tongues. These aren't just carvings, they're a cryptographic Rosetta Stone of the Bronze Age, etching the same royal decrees in both Hittite cuneiform and the swirling hieroglyphs of Luwian. When British archaeologist Leonard Woolley uncovered them in the 1920s, he didn't just find another ruin, he struck linguistic gold. The inscriptions here didn't merely record history, they held the key to unlocking an entire civilization's voice. Take the famous Warrior King relief. Towering above the city gates, it shows a monarch trampling enemies beneath his chariot, a familiar trope of imperial propaganda. But it's the symbols framing the scene that changed everything. The same proclamation appears twice, once in angular cuneiform for Hittite officials, once in curvilinear Luwian hieroglyphs for local eyes. This bilingual duplication proved the empire didn't impose one language, it governed through a calculated balance of cultural codes. The cuneiform version emphasizes legalistic details, tribute quotas, vassal obligations. The hieroglyphic rendition, it's all visceral imagery, thunderbolts striking foes, goddesses shielding the king, as if speaking directly to the collective unconscious of Anatolia. Deciphering these scripts was like solving a puzzle where every piece reshapes the board. Early scholars assumed Hittite hieroglyphs were purely logographic, each symbol representing a word. But Carchemish revealed their phonetic dimension. A single lion symbol might mean lion in one context but stand for the syllable wa in another, depending on placement. This flexibility explains how the Hittites managed an empire stretching from the Aegean to Syria. Their writing adapted like dialectal chameleons. The real breakthrough came from comparing royal titles. A cuneiform tablet from Hattusa might dub a ruler Great King Labana, while his Carchemish counterpart appears as a hieroglyphic combo of son and hero. These weren't translations, they were cultural transpositions, tailoring messages to different audiences without losing core meaning. A tax demand in bureaucratic Hittite became a divine mandate in Luwian symbolism. But Carchemish stones guard darker secrets too. Later inscriptions show the hieroglyphs growing bolder, cuneiform receiving a visual metaphor of the empire's loosening grip. By 1200 BC, whole proclamations appear only in Luwian, as if the Hittite heartland's voice was fading. Yet even in decline, their genius endured. Scholars now realize these hieroglyphs weren't primitive pictures, they were a sophisticated shorthand. While cuneiform required scribes to master 600 signs, Luwian conveyed the same information with under 200, foreshadowing the alphabetic revolutions to come. The ultimate irony, these carvings outlasted their creators. When Assyrians sacked Carchemish, they left the inscriptions intact, perhaps recognizing a kindred bureaucratic mind. Millennia later, their stubborn survival allows us to hear the Hittites not as a monolingual monolith, but as masterful code switchers, shaping perception through the alchemy of script. Buried beneath the ruins of Hattusa's royal palace, a dagger fit for a pharaoh gleamed in the darkness, its blade forged not from common bronze but from celestial silver. The moment archaeologists lifted it from the soil in 1986, the implications were staggering. Here, in the heart of the Hittite Empire, lay a weapon bearing the unmistakable cartouche of Tutankhamun, the boy king of distant Egypt. How did this royal treasure cross 700 miles of mountains and deserts to reach Anatolia? The answer rewrites our understanding of Bronze Age diplomacy as more than just treaties and trade. It was a world of deadly gifts and unspoken threats. The dagger's craftsmanship screams Egyptian genius. Its hilt, inlaid with lapis lazuli and gold, depicts papyrus reeds and lotus flowers, motifs alien to Hittite art but sacred along the Nile. Spectrographic analysis revealed something even more astonishing. The silver contains trace nickel-matching meteoric iron deposits found only in the Egyptian desert. This wasn't just any metal, it was iron from the sky, a divine material reserved for pharaohs. Yet the real bombshell came when researchers noticed tiny hieroglyphs along the blade's spine, an inscription dedicating the dagger to the foreign king's enduring friendship. Now consider the historical context. Just decades before this dagger's creation, Hittite and Egyptian armies clashed catastrophically at Kadesh. The peace treaty that followed, engraved on silver tablets, became legendary. But this blade suggests something darker beneath the diplomacy. Tablet fragments from Hattusa's archives describe a tense exchange, Pharaoh I, Tutankhamun's successor, sending gifts of iron to Suppiluliuma I after the mysterious death of a Hittite prince betrothed to an Egyptian queen. Was this dagger part of that poisoned olive branch, a royal apology carved in silver and steel? The weapon's journey through the ancient world reads like a thriller. Caravans would have carried it through Ugarit's ports, where Hittite and Egyptian merchants rubbed shoulders. Tablets from that city record silver shipments being guarded by dual contingents of soldiers, a precaution against both bandits and spies. One particularly vivid letter from a Hittite border official warns of gifts that cut deeper than their edges, hinting at the dagger's dual role as both treasure and psychological weapon. Perhaps most chilling is what happened after it reached Hattusa. The blade shows no signs of use, but forensic archaeology tells a different story. Minute scratches near the hilt match the dimensions of Hittite royal signet rings, suggesting kings gripped it while swearing oaths. Residue analysis detected myrrh and cedar oil substances used in Hittite curse rituals. This wasn't just a display piece, it became an object of power in its own right, a physical manifestation of the fragile peace between superpowers. When the palace burned during Hattusa's fall, someone took care to bury the dagger upright beneath the throne room's foundations, as if entrusting it to the earth rather than letting enemies reclaim it. Today, the dagger's silent presence in Ankara's Museum of Anatolian Civilizations poses unsettling questions. Did Suppiluliuma's heirs view it as a trophy or a ticking time bomb? Why does its style so closely resemble daggers found in Tutankhamun's tomb, yet bear markings absent from Egyptian records? Every scratch on its surface whispers of alliances forged in suspicion and respect, of a Bronze Age world where the deadliest weapons weren't swung in battle, but passed hand to hand in gilded halls, their true edges hidden beneath a sheen of diplomacy. Tucked between rolling hills and a natural spring in central Anatolia, the Eflatun monument rises like a mirage, a towering stone canvas where water and mythology merge. This isn't just a shrine, it's a Bronze Age masterpiece of hydraulic engineering and spiritual storytelling, carved directly into the living rock. At first glance, the monument's centerpiece dazzles, a row of colossal mountain gods, their bearded faces stern, their shoulders draped in flowing robes that seem to ripple like actual waterfalls. But lean closer and you'll notice something extraordinary. The entire relief is designed to channel spring water through hidden grooves, so that when the basin fills, liquid cascades down the figure's carved folds, transforming stone into a living, moving tribute to the Hittites' most sacred forces, earth and water. The engineering behind this aquatic theater reveals a civilization far ahead of its time. Unlike simple catchment basins found in other ancient cultures, Eflatunpanar's system uses gravity-fed channels to distribute water evenly across the relief. Archaeologists found sluice gates carved into the base, allowing priests to control flow rates during rituals, an innovation predating Roman aqueducts by a millennium. Even more impressive, the spring's mineral content was carefully analyzed. Recent studies show the Hittites selected this specific site because its calcium-rich waters left gleaming white deposits on the carvings, making the gods appear to glow with divine light after each ceremony. Now consider the symbolism. Each mountain god represents a specific peak sacred to the Hittites, their tiered headdresses mimicking the silhouette of real Anatolian ranges. Tablet fragments from Hattusa describe annual festivals where envoys from these distant mountains would bring soil to mix with Eflatunpanar's waters, a ritual unification of the empire's far-flung territories. The monument's layout mirrors this political theology. The central god is flanked by 12 smaller deities, echoing the Hittite practice of 12 regional governors swearing allegiance to the king during spring equinox rites. But the real revolution lies beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar revealed an extensive underground network, tunnels radiating outward like roots, some extending over 300 feet. These weren't just drainage channels, they were acoustic conduits. When reconstructed, the system proves that pouring water into certain basins would create harmonic resonances, amplifying chants into eerie, godlike echoes. One tunnel aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, flooding the central chamber with light precisely as the water reaches its peak flow, a multisensory spectacle designed to overwhelm worshippers. Parallels emerge across Hittite territory. At nearby Beishihir, a similar though smaller water shrine features identical mountain god imagery. In the foothills of the Taurus Mountains, clay tablets describe singing springs where oracles interpreted the pitch of cascading water. Together, they paint a picture of a civilization that didn't just harness nature, they conversed with it, using hydraulics as a language to mediate between human and divine. The monument's final secret, its resilience. When drought struck in 1200 BCE, Hittite engineers modified the system to recycle water through hidden subterranean reservoirs, a last-ditch effort to keep the gods speaking. Today, as Eflatunpanar's waters still trickle down those ancient carvings, they carry more than mineral deposits. They bear witness to a people who saw rivers as veins of the earth and engineering as the highest form of prayer. Among the shattered remnants of Hittite feasts and rituals, two ceramic masterpieces spin tales of a culture intoxicated by rhythm, the Husayindet and Bitik vases. Unearthed decades apart, these vessels bear more than decorative dancers. They preserve the precise choreography of ceremonies lost to time. The Husayindet vase, discovered near Sorum in 1997, captures a harvest festival in swirling terracotta. Musicians pound framed drums with curved sticks, while women in layered skirts pivot with arms interlaced, their braided hair flying outward like whirling sunbursts. But just 200 miles west, the Bitik vase from Ankara's outskirts tells a darker story. Here, the dancers wear animal masks, their bodies contorted in ecstatic leaps around what appears to be a sacrificial bull. The contrast between the two scenes reveals a startling duality. The Hittites saw dance as both joyous celebration and sacred possession. Zoom in on their costumes, each fold and fringe a Rosetta Stone for reconstructing Bronze Age textiles. The Husayindet figures wear checkered kilts stitched with intricate tassels, matching fabric remnants found in Hattusa's elite tombs. One dancer's belt bears a crescent moon buckle, identical to bronze clasps excavated near Alaca Höyük. But the Bitik dancer's attire is more ritualistic. Their ankle-length robes, striped with wavy blue pigment still faintly visible, mirror descriptions of storm god vestments from temple inventories. Most striking are their boots curled upward at the toes like Mesopotamian deities, footwear suggesting these weren't ordinary mortals, but humans embodying gods during trance ceremonies. The instruments depicted solve long-standing archaeological debates. The Husayindet musicians play lyres with 7 strings, confirming tablet references to 7-toned hymns. One holds a peculiar twin pipe flute, its design so precise that modern craftsmen reconstructed it in 2018. The resulting sound eerily close to descriptions of bull roar ceremonies. The Bitic vase introduces something darker, a player shaking a sistrum, a rattling percussion instrument filled with what tablets call teeth of the underworld, likely animal bones or pebbles from volcanic caves. This wasn't mere music, it was sonic alchemy designed to summon specific divine energies. What truly connects these vases is their shared secret hidden sigils. Under ultraviolet light, faded paints reveal symbols painted on dancers' palms. Sun discs for Hussein's agricultural rites, lightning bolts for Bitic storm rituals. Even the pottery itself holds meaning. Clay analysis shows Hussein's earthy paste came from a fertility shrine soil, while Bitic's fabric mixes ash from burnt offerings. These vessels weren't passive observers, they were active participants, their very material consecrated for ceremony. The ultimate revelation lies in their broken states. Both vases were carefully shattered in antiquity, their pieces buried in separate pits, a practice Hittite texts describe as releasing the dance back to the earth. When archaeologists painstakingly reassembled them, they didn't just restore artifacts, they resurrected performances frozen in motion 3,000 years ago, proving that for the Hittites, music wasn't entertainment, it was the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. In the dim glow of a scribe's lamp, fingers trembling with divine fever, a Hittite priest pressed reed to clay and etched words that would outlive empires, predictions of plagues, battlefield outcomes, and royal fates. The Ortakuri cuneiform tablets discovered in 1990 near Sorum aren't mere records of divination. They're chillingly precise weather vanes of catastrophe, each line pulsing with a civilization's desperate dialogue with the unseen. Unlike the vague prophecies of Delphi or the cryptic dreams of Mesopotamian omen texts, these tablets chronicle systematic interrogation of the gods through animal entrails, flight patterns of birds, and even the death throes of sacrificed prisoners, methods so meticulously recorded that modern epidemiologists have matched their plague warnings to dendrochronological evidence of drought-induced famines. Take tablet KUB 8.36, where a seer describes inspecting a sheep's liver for black veins like cracking earth, interpreting it as a sign of impending grain blight. Within years, pollen samples from that exact period show a dramatic spike in ergot fungus, a crop disease causing hallucinations and gangrene. Another text, KUB 5.6, recounts celestial omens preceding a Hittite defeat at the hands of the Cascans. When Mars lingered in the scorpion's tail and the sacrificial ox birthed a two-headed calf, the armies of Hatti would bleed upon the northern stones. Excavations at the described battle site later revealed mass graves with trauma patterns confirming the disastrous campaign. The mechanics of this divination reveal a startling blend of empiricism and mysticism. Priests didn't just passively wait for signs, they provoked them through controlled experiments. Tablet fragments describe trial by heated blade, where metal rods were applied to animal hides with the direction of curling smoke determining military strategy. One particularly haunting account details pouring water over a bound prisoner's face, timing their spasms to predict the duration of a coming fever pandemic. The correlation between these brutal rituals and actual outcomes suggests the Hittites had developed something akin to proto-scientific observation, recognizing patterns between environmental stressors and societal collapse long before germ theory or meteorology. What makes these tablets revolutionary isn't just their accuracy, it's their bureaucratic normalcy. Each prophecy was filed with serial numbers, cross-referenced with lunar cycles, and stamped with the names of verifying officials. A typical entry reads like a clinical report. On the third month of the harvest, under Chief Diviner Perwa's seal, the raven's flight east at dawn coincided with a stillborn foal. Verdict: postpone the king's journey to Aleppo, witnessed by scribes Ania and Huzziya. This meticulous record-keeping transformed intuition into state policy, with one archive listing over 700 divinations performed for King Muwatalli Roman II alone. The darkest revelation came when archaeologists noticed a pattern in the later tablets, increasingly frantic appeals to the disappearing gods as the empire crumbled. Where early texts confidently interpret omens, those from 1200 BC beg for clarity. Why do the livers show only empty valleys? Why do the birds circle without direction? This breakdown in communication mirrors sediment cores showing a perfect storm of earthquakes, crop failures, and migrant invasions catastrophes so overwhelming they shattered even the Hittites' sacred dialogue with the divine. In the end, their greatest prophets may have been their own painstaking records, etching onto clay what they couldn't bear to face. An empire reading its own doom in the quivering guts of sacrificial beasts. Rising from the parched plains of central Anatolia, the Gölpınar Dam doesn't just defy time, it humiliates it. Built 3,200 years ago, this isn't some crude pile of rocks. It's a precision-engineered marvel that transformed barren land into a breadbasket, proving the Hittites mastered water with the same skill they wielded swords. Stretching nearly 300 feet across its curved masonry wall, a technique Europeans wouldn't rediscover until the Roman era, stands as the oldest known dam in Anatolia, a silent witness to an empire that didn't just conquer nature but collaborated with it. What makes Gölpınar revolutionary isn't just its age but its intelligence. Unlike simple weirs that merely held back water, this structure was designed to breathe. Laser scans reveal a network of hidden sluice gates and sediment traps that allowed farmers to calibrate flow with surgical precision, flooding fields in spring, then gradually reducing water to strengthen crop roots by summer. Tablet fragments from nearby Sapanuva detail how officials calculated irrigation schedules based on dam levels, adjusting quotas for barley versus lentils. One particularly ingenious feature, a spillway carved with diagonal grooves that slowed torrential rains, preventing erosion. A design so effective modern engineers replicated it in 21st century flood control projects. The dam's true genius lies in what it fed. Soil analysis shows the reservoir's waters carried mineral-rich silt from volcanic uplands, systematically deposited across fields to renew fertility without human labor. Archaeobotanists found wheat kernels near Gölpınar averaging 30% larger than those from non-irrigated regions, a bounty that powered Hittite armies and fueled trade networks stretching to Mesopotamia. But the most startling discovery came when researchers noticed something odd about the dam's alignment. Its curve precisely mirrors the arc of the summer solstice sunrise, suggesting the structure wasn't just functional, it was cosmological. Tablet KOB 43.88 describes priests chanting to the dam that drinks the sun, pouring offerings into its waters during equinoxes, a fusion of hydrology and theology that turned infrastructure into sacrament. Yet Gölpınar's greatest lesson might be its resilience. When drought gripped Anatolia around 1200 BC, the Hittites didn't abandon their masterpiece, they adapted. Chisel marks on later editions show them reinforcing the spillway, while sediment cores reveal they deliberately redirected spring runoff to recharge groundwater. In their final days, as invaders burned cities, someone took pains to seal the dam's sluices with clay, a last act of stewardship for the land that had sustained them. Today, as modern farmers still till soil moistened by its ancient waters, the dam whispers a truth we're only now relearning. Civilization doesn't triumph over rivers, it dances with them. Deep in the ashy layers of Kultep's ruins, a set of fragmented wooden spokes whispered the secret to the Hittites' battlefield dominance wheels that didn't just carry chariots, but revolutionized warfare itself. These aren't the clunky, solid discs of earlier civilizations. They're lightweight, spoked masterpieces engineered for speed and maneuverability. Their design so advanced it would dictate military strategy for centuries. Picture this, a Hittite chariot racing across the plains at Kadesh, its 6-spoked wheels absorbing terrain shocks like Bronze Age suspension, while Egyptian forces lumbered behind on heavy 4-spoked models. The difference wasn't just stylistic, it was the gap between victory and obliteration. Forensic analysis of the Kultep wheels reveals why they outclassed everything else on the ancient battlefield. Carved from resilient oak and reinforced with rawhide tires soaked in resin, each wheel weighed less than half its solid counterparts, but the real innovation lay in the spoke geometry, angled slightly outward to distribute weight evenly, preventing the axle fractures that plagued other armies. Tablets from Hattusa's archives boast that Hittite chariots could pivot as swiftly as a falcon's turn, a claim backed by experimental archaeology. When researchers reconstructed these wheels in 2019, they achieved speeds of 25 miles per hour over rough terrain, nearly double what Egyptian chariots could manage. The tactical implications were staggering. At Kadesh, Hittite charioteers exploited this mobility to execute feints and encirclements that bewildered Ramses' Roman II forces. One relief from Abu Simbel captures the chaos: Hittite chariots slicing through Egyptian lines like scythes, their wheels kicking up dust clouds that became weapons of visual deception. But the Kultep fragments hint at an even darker genius. Some spokes bear grooves for attaching blades or sickle-like projections, turning chariots into mobile slaughterhouses. A gruesome tablet from the battle's aftermath describes severed legs spinning like wheel spokes, a detail modern excavators confirmed when they found amputated limbs clustered in kill zones matching Hittite attack vectors. Yet these wheels weren't just tools of carnage, they were status symbols crafted with ritual precision. Dendrochronology shows the oak was felled during winter solstices, believed to imbue the wood with cosmic durability. One wheel fragment from Kultep retains traces of crimson paint and gold leaf, suggesting parade models for royal displays. The irony: this same artistry made them vulnerable. Egyptian records gleefully describe capturing Hattie's gilded wheels as trophies, unaware they were reverse engineering the very technology that would later propel New Kingdom chariotry to new heights. The final revelation lies in the saw marks. Unlike the clean cuts of Mesopotamian wheelwrights, Hittite spokes show deliberate micro-notches, a technique reducing stress fractures. It's a whisper of empiricism amidst the mysticism, proving that even at the height of their divine kingship, the Hittites respected the ruthless physics of momentum and mass. Today, as modern militaries study these wheels for lightweight armor designs, their legacy rolls on not just as relics of war, but as masterclasses in how engineering can tilt the scales of destiny. Carved into a sheer cliff face where the Taurus Mountains meet the fertile plains of southern Anatolia, the Ivri's rock relief towers over visitors like a divine billboard from the Iron Age. This monumental artwork, standing nearly 20 feet tall, depicts King Warpalawas of Tyana, a post-Hittite ruler offering grapes and wheat to the storm god Tahansa. But here's the twist: though created centuries after the Hittite Empire's collapse, every chisel mark screams their artistic DNA. The god's horned helmet mirrors those worn by Hittite deities in Bronze Age carvings, his upraised fist clutching thunderbolts identical to reliefs at Yazılıkaya. Even the king's posture, one knee slightly bent in reverence, copies poses from Hattusa's royal galleries. It's as if the Hittite aesthetic refused to die, persisting like a cultural ghost long after their cities crumbled. What makes Ivri's so fascinating isn't just its homage to the past, it's how it twists tradition. Tahansa here isn't the fearsome warrior of earlier depictions. He's a benevolent fertility figure, with vines sprouting from his shoulders and sheaves of grain cascading down his robe. The inscription in hieroglyphic Luwian reveals Warpalawa's boasting of making the wasteland flourish, tying his legitimacy to agricultural abundance rather than military conquest. This reboot of Tahansa's image suggests a savvy political move, rebranding a war god as a harvest deity to pacify populations weary of Iron Age conflicts. The relief's construction reveals staggering ambition. Unlike earlier Hittite works carved at eye level, Ivri's dominates a vertical rock face 60 feet above a spring-fed pool. Recent 3D scans show the artists exploited natural fissures to create optical illusions when reflected in the water at dawn. Tahunza's figure appears to rise from the depths. The staging wasn't just dramatic, it was hydrological. The pool irrigated surrounding fields, making the relief literally a monument to the god's life-giving power. Yet Ivriz guards its most tantalizing secret in plain sight. Hidden among the grape clusters are tiny carvings of bees, a symbol absent from Hittite art but prevalent in Phrygian culture. This subtle detail hints at the swirling cultural currents of the era, where Neo-Hittite kingdoms like Tyana blended ancestral traditions with influences from new Anatolian powers. The bees might have represented industry to Warpalawa's Phrygian allies, but to Luwian-speaking locals, they echoed old Hittite metaphors linking rulers to shepherds of the land. Archaeologists still debate whether Ivriz represents cultural continuity or calculated nostalgia. The Luwian script is more fluid than Hittite hieroglyphs, the proportions of the figures slightly exaggerated. But when sunlight hits the relief at midday, casting Tahunza's shadow across the king in a mimicry of divine approval, one thing becomes clear. The Hittites may have fallen, but their visual language still spoke volumes to those who inherited their world. Beneath the dusty floors of a modest farmhouse in Kailipanar, a collection of unassuming clay tablets tells a story far more gripping than any royal decree: the daily struggle of Hittite farmers against the whims of nature and the demands of empire. This cache of 73 tablets, discovered in 2005, doesn't record battles or treaties. Instead, it meticulously tracks barley harvests, livestock tallies, and rainfall patterns across 15 years, offering an unprecedented window into how ordinary people weathered Bronze Age climate disasters. One particularly revealing tablet lists that season's grain tax 345 measures from a village called Harana, then adds a scribbled postscript, paid in full though the locusts took half the fields. Cross-referencing these records with modern climatology reveals a chilling pattern. The years 1230 to 1215 BC show plummeting yields, followed by desperate entries like "gave seed grain from the temple stores" and "loaned 2 oxen to Zida of the broken plough." Tree ring data from nearby Gordian confirms these were years of severe drought, proving the Hittites didn't just document weather, they fought a systematic war against it. The tablets expose a sophisticated safety net: regional granaries redistributing grain, temples offering interest-free loans, and even famine roads built to connect struggling villages. But the real bombshell lies in the bureaucratic details. Each tablet bears 2 sets of numbers, one in the standard Hittite measurement system, another in a local unit called the parisu. Scholars realized this wasn't just a conversion, it was tax relief. During lean years, the empire accepted payments in the smaller parisu measures, effectively cutting obligations by nearly a third. This flexible system, hidden in plain sight, explains how the Hittite heartland endured centuries of instability while other Bronze Age societies collapsed. The Kailipanar cache also shatters myths about ancient accounting. Far from primitive tallies, these tablets use cross-referenced codes, symbols linking harvests to specific fields, weather conditions, even the names of surveyors who verified yields. One damaged but legible record notes, "Field of Ania, North Slope, surveyed by Pihunias after the hailstorm, adjusted yield, 60% standard." This level of granularity suggests a government deeply invested in fairness, capable of micro-adjusting taxes based on hyperlocal conditions. Perhaps most poignant are the human touches bleeding through the bureaucratic veneer. A scribe's shaky handwriting marks the year his daughter died in childbirth. Another tablet's edge bears the imprint of a child's fingerprint, likely a farmer's son playing with wet clay while his father settled accounts. These accidental traces remind us that behind every number were real people, their lives inextricably tied to the land's bounty and brutality. The final tablet in the cache, dated to 1208 BC, reads simply, to the governor, "We have no more grain, no more seed, no more oxen. The people eat bark." Within decades, Kailipanar was abandoned. Yet even in this grim farewell, there's revelation. The scribes still used the formal diplomatic address, proof that even as the world crumbled, the Hittites clung to the systems that had sustained them for centuries. Their greatest monument isn't carved in stone but pressed into humble clay, a testament to resilience written not by kings but by the calloused hands that fed an empire. In a dimly lit tomb at Alaca Höyük, a glimmer of gold defied 3 millennia of darkness. A pair of earrings so delicate, so impossibly intricate, they might have been crafted yesterday. These aren't mere ornaments, they're masterclasses in metallurgical genius, their surfaces alive with thousands of microscopic gold beads fused into spirals and rosettes, each smaller than a grain of sand. The technique, granulation, a process so advanced even modern jewelers struggle to replicate it without microscopic tools. But here's what makes these earrings revolutionary: their design isn't purely Hittite. The swirling motifs mirror those found in Mycenaean Greek tombs, proving these two civilizations weren't just trading goods, they were exchanging artistic DNA across the Aegean. The craftsmanship borders on alchemy. To create granulation, Hittite metalsmiths would painstakingly arrange tiny gold spheres onto a surface using an organic adhesive, likely honey or plant resin. Then heat the piece just enough to melt the granules' edges without distorting their perfect spheres. Chemical analysis reveals an even more startling secret. The gold contains trace platinum, a metal the Hittites couldn't have smelted themselves. This platinum signature matches ore deposits from the distant Taurus Mountains, suggesting these earrings passed through a vast trade network before reaching their final resting place. Now consider the Mycenaean connection. The earrings' spiral motifs are nearly identical to those on gold rings from Grave Circle at Mycenae, but with one crucial difference. The Hittite version incorporates their sacred solar discs into the design. It's as if a Greek pattern was filtered through Anatolian symbolism, creating a hybrid art form. Tablet fragments from Hattusa confirm this cultural exchange, with one text mentioning Ahioan gold workers, likely Mycenaeans employed in Hittite palace workshops. Another describes a diplomatic gift exchange involving 20 golden whorls, possibly referring to granulated jewelry. The earrings' discovery context adds another layer of intrigue. They were found not on a noblewoman but tucked beside a male scribe's skull, an anomaly in a culture where men typically wore simpler bronze ornaments. Could this indicate a high-status artisan or perhaps a diplomat who'd lived among Mycenaeans? The tomb's other offerings, a stylus and a tablet fragment with Greek loanwords, hint at someone who bridged both worlds. What truly astonishes is how these tiny objects rewrite trade maps. Previously, historians believed Mycenaean influence stopped at Western Anatolia, but the earrings' gold composition matches that of Greek artifacts, while their granulation style shows Hittite refinements. This wasn't one-way imitation, it was a dialogue, with each civilization pushing the other's craftsmanship further. Recent underwater archaeology supports this. Shipwrecks off Ulubur unyielded identical gold beads alongside both Hittite and Mycenaean cargo, proving these connections were ongoing, not just diplomatic one-offs. The final irony lies in their preservation. When invaders sacked Alaca Höyük, they ransacked tombs for gold yet overlooked these earrings. Their delicate appearance may have saved them. To untrained eyes, they resembled mere trinkets compared to showy bullion. Today, as conservators painstakingly clean each granule with fine-tipped lasers, they're not just restoring artifacts, they're reassembling a lost chapter where artistry flowed as freely as gold across ancient borders, and the smallest objects carried the weight of empires. The sarissa ceremonial axe gleams in museum, lighting today not as a weapon of war, but as a sacred key to Hittite power, a blade that crowned kings and bound generals to the storm god's will. Unearthed near Hattusa's royal barracks in 2012, its polished bronze surface shimmers with an eerie, almost liquid glow, the metal alloyed with meteoric iron to catch sunlight like lightning frozen in metal. But the true power lies in the cuneiform spiraling around its haft, not dedicatory prayers, but the names and titles of 7 military commanders, each sworn to uphold the Labana's throne with iron and oath. This wasn't just a ritual object, it was a Bronze Age nuclear codes, a physical manifestation of the army's loyalty to the state. Forensic archaeology reveals the axe's dual nature. Its edge, though sharpened to a mirror finish, shows zero battle where yet the grip bears dark stains from oils and resins used in consecration rituals. Tablet fragments from Topeka's governor's archive describe a ceremony called the Binding of the Blade, where new kings grasped the axe alongside their generals, symbolically merging military and divine authority. The most chilling detail, tiny notches along the haft correspond exactly to the number of Hittite coronations recorded in the archives, suggesting each ruler added a mark upon ascension. The inscriptions rewrite our understanding of Hittite military hierarchy. Unlike Egyptian or Assyrian reliefs showing anonymous troops, the Sarissa axe names individuals: General Zida, who strikes like thunder, Commander Piton, the mountain's shadow, with their hometowns and battle honors. This personalized approach reveals a meritocratic system where loyalty was rewarded with eternal remembrance in sacred metal. One name appears larger than others: General Curanta, likely the axe's first bearer, described in adjacent temple reliefs as the king's spear and shield. His prominence suggests the axe may have originated as a reward for saving the monarchy during the tumultuous reign of Tudhaliya III. Radiocarbon dating of the leather wrappings solved one of Hittitology's enduring mysteries. The hide comes from a bull sacrificed during a total solar eclipse visible over Hattusa in 1294 BCE, a date matching cuneiform accounts of King Hattusili III's contested coronation. This celestial timing wasn't accidental. Tablets describe how usurpers would exploit eclipses as divine displeasure with the current ruler. By wielding an axe linked to both the army and the cosmos, Hattusili didn't just claim power, he demonstrated control over the very phenomena that threatened his legitimacy. Modern experiments with a reconstructed Sarissa axe revealed its hidden acoustical genius. When swung in temple courtyards, its unique blade shape produces a low-frequency hum eerily similar to recordings of distant thunderstorms, a sonic illusion that would have mesmerized crowds during ceremonies. Combined with residue analysis showing traces of hallucinogenic smoke on its surface, the axe emerges not just as a political tool, but as a psychological weapon, bending reality to reinforce the king's godlike status. Yet the axe's final secret may lie in its abandonment. Found carefully buried beneath a barracks floor rather than enshrined in a temple, its last inscription is a single word: broken. This matches clay tablets describing General Mitanamua's rebellion against Tudhaliya IV, where renegade troops allegedly sundered the sacred blade to sever their oath. In the end, the Sarissa axe's fate mirrored the empire it helped build, a masterpiece of unity shattered by the very forces it once commanded. Buried beneath a nondescript mound in central Turkey, the Alaca Höyük mosaic shatters our artistic timelines with its hypnotic dance of triangles and spirals, a floor of stone secrets laid nearly 3,500 years before Pompeii's famed villas. Discovered in 2018 by Italian and Turkish archaeologists, this sprawling geometric design isn't just decoration. It's a revolution in clay and stone, forcing historians to rewrite the story of Mediterranean art. Unlike later Greek or Roman mosaics that prioritized figural scenes, the Hittite craftsmen worked in abstract language, interlocking black, white, and red stones, forming precise meanders and stepped patterns that seem to pulse with mathematical energy. The effect isn't merely visual. Walk across these stones when sunlight hits at midday, and the shadows cast by the raised edges create an illusion of movement, as if the floor itself breathes beneath your feet. What makes this mosaic extraordinary isn't just its age, but its sophistication. Each tessera, the individual stone piece, was carefully shaped from local basalt, limestone, and rare green schist, then set into a bed of waterproof hydraulic mortar. This last detail stumped researchers until they analyzed the mixture and found traces of tree resin and crushed pottery, an ingenious waterproofing technique previously thought to be a Roman innovation 800 years later. The precision is staggering. Laser scans show variations of less than 2 millimeters between stones across the entire 30-foot span, a consistency impossible without advanced measuring tools. A broken tablet found nearby mentions the floor that sings to the storm god, likely referring to how rainwater would channel through the mosaic's grooves during rituals, creating melodic drips that echoed through the palace halls. But the real bombshell lies in the patterns themselves. Those intricate Greek key designs you've seen on classical vases, they ripple across this Hittite floor centuries earlier. The staggered triangles mirror motifs from Mycenaean pottery, while the central spiral, a sacred Hittite symbol for eternity, resembles later Etruscan tomb art. This isn't coincidence, it's proof of a sprawling artistic conversation across the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Scholars had long assumed geometric mosaics spread westward from Greece after 1200 BC. Alaca Höyük flips that narrative, suggesting the Hittites may have been the original innovators, their designs carried by traders and mercenaries along copper routes from Anatolia to Italy. The excavation team uncovered something even more telling beneath the mosaic, a network of heated channels indicating this was no ordinary reception hall. Charred fragments of hallucinogenic herbs and bronze censers suggest the room served as both throne room and ritual space, where kings literally walked atop sacred geometry during divination ceremonies. One particularly worn section aligns with a dais where the ruler's feet would rest, its stones polished smooth by generations of sandaled feet. The message was clear: to govern was to participate in cosmic order, every step reaffirming the connection between earthly power and celestial harmony. Perhaps most poignant is what the mosaic doesn't show. Unlike later civilizations that depicted conquests or myths, the Hittites expressed their worldview through pure form: no lions, no gods, just the endless interplay of shapes mirroring their belief in life's cyclical nature. When invaders torched the palace around 1200 BC, the heat cracked many stones but couldn't erase their logic. Today, as conservators painstakingly reassemble each fragment, they're not just restoring a floor. They're piecing together the lost prologue to an artistic tradition we thought we knew, proving that beauty often hides in plain sight, waiting centuries for the right eyes to see it anew. To truly grasp the genius behind the Alaca Höyük mosaic, you have to think like a Hittite artisan, someone who saw stones not as lifeless fragments, but as pieces of a divine puzzle. The pebbles themselves tell a story of calculated choice. Basalt, quarried from volcanic highlands 50 miles away, provided durability against centuries of footsteps. Limestone, sourced from riverbeds, offered creamy contrast, but the real shock came when spectrographic analysis revealed flecks of malachite and azurite, minerals not native to Anatolia. These vibrant green and blue stones could only have come from the Sinai Peninsula or Cyprus, transported via trade networks that stretched across the eastern Mediterranean like threads in a grand tapestry. The laying techniques border on alchemy. Unlike later Roman mosaics set in rigid grids, the Hittites employed an organic method called opus circumactum. Each pebble slightly rotated to catch light differently, creating a shimmering effect when viewed from moving angles. Archaeologists found tiny chisel marks on the stone's undersides, proof they were individually shaped to interlock like gears. Even more astonishing, the mortar binding them wasn't just lime and sand. Traces of beeswax and crushed eggshells were mixed in, a recipe that allowed subtle flexibility during earthquakes, and innovation modern engineers have since replicated in seismic zones. But the palette holds the most tantalizing clues about cultural exchange. That deep red ochre staining certain triangles, its chemical signature matches pigments used in Minoan frescoes at Knossos. The black stone's high manganese content mirrors samples from Sardinia, while the white limestone's granular structure is identical to tiles found in Ugarit's palaces. This wasn't happenstance. Tablet fragments from Hattusa's archives mention floor makers from Keftiu, likely Minoan Crete, working alongside local artisans, blending Aegean flair with Hittite precision. One broken ledger even lists payments of 3 shekels of silver to the island-dwelling pattern men, confirming these collaborations were formal, not accidental. The mosaic's construction sequence reveals a ritual dimension. Excavators noticed the sections closest to the presumed throne dais were laid first, radiating outward in concentric bands. Infrared imaging detected faint traces of charcoal beneath the inaugural stones, likely remnants of foundation sacrifices. A nearby cache of animal bones and broken libation vessels suggests each phase of work was consecrated, turning the floor's creation into a prolonged act of worship. Later cultures would separate art from religion, but for the Hittites, every chisel strike was a prayer, every color choice a cosmic alignment. What truly rewrites history is the discovery of tiny drill holes along the edges of key stones. Initially dismissed as damage, they turned out to be part of a sophisticated leveling system. Threads, possibly linen or sinew, would have been strung through them, allowing artisans to adjust heights with precision worthy of a violin maker. This technique resurfaces 800 years later in Greek mosaics at Pella, but with one critical difference. The Hittite version accounts for thermal expansion, leaving microscopic gaps that prevented cracking during Anatolia's harsh winters. The ultimate revelation came when conservators flipped a loose stone and found fingerprints pressed into the mortar, not just any prints but those of a child. Paired with footprints preserved in a nearby patch of wet clay, they paint a poignant scene. Apprentices learning the craft alongside masters, their hands guided as they pressed stones into sacred patterns. This mosaic wasn't just art, it was a living school where techniques and traditions passed from one generation to the next, each pebble a testament to minds that saw beauty in geometry and eternity in stone. Before these artifacts emerged from the earth, history books dismissed the Hittites as peripheral players, a footnote to Egypt and Mesopotamia's grand narratives. Today, their recovered legacy stands as a seismic correction to that oversight, forcing us to redraw entire chapters of the ancient world. Take literacy, for instance. For centuries, scholars assumed the Hittites were borrowers of cuneiform, adapting Mesopotamian script without innovation. Then came the Boghazköy tablets, over 30,000 clay documents revealing a society so bureaucratically sophisticated they maintained parallel filing systems in multiple languages. These weren't passive copiers, they were linguistic alchemists blending Akkadian diplomacy with Hittite ritual formulas and Hurrian hymns into a trilingual administrative tapestry. One tablet alone, the multilingual Prayer of Cantuzili, proves they didn't just use writing, they weaponized it, crafting poetic pleas to deities in 3 tongues simultaneously, ensuring no god could claim lost in translation. Trade routes tell an equally transformative story. Before the Kayalipinar farming records and Uluburun shipwreck artifacts, maps showed Anatolia as a cultural backwater. Now we see it as the hub of a sprawling Bronze Age internet tin from Afghanistan flowing to Hattusa's workshops, amber from the Baltic gracing Mycenaean-style granulation jewelry, and cedar resin from Lebanon sealing treaties across 3 continents. The chemical fingerprints on these objects act as prehistoric GPS coordinates. Obsidian tools from Gurlu Dag volcano found in Egyptian tombs, Hittite pottery shards bearing traces of grapes native to the Caucasus. Each artifact is a node in a network far more interconnected than we ever imagined, where a farmer's drought complaint in central Anatolia could trigger grain shipments from Egypt, brokered by Assyrian merchants using Hittite standardized weights. Perhaps no revelation is as paradigm-shattering as the Hittites' role as proto-constitutionalists. Before the Treaty of Kadesh tablet surfaced, ancient diplomacy was thought to be a crude game of tribute and subjugation. Here was a document acknowledging mutual defense clauses, extradition protocols, even a rudimentary form of asylum rights concepts we associate with modern international law. The Hittites didn't just make peace, they institutionalized it, with subsequent treaties found from Ugarit to Troy adopting their precise legal phrasing. That silver dagger bearing Tutankhamun's cartouche, it's not just a royal gift, it's forensic evidence verifying treaty stipulations about exchanging weapons as tokens of bond, showing how material culture cemented political relationships. The artistic revolution sparked by these finds is equally profound. Before the Ivri's relief or Alaca Höyük mosaic, Hittite art was dismissed as derivative. Now we recognize their role as visual synthesizers, taking Mycenaean spirals and transforming them into cosmic symbols, remixing Egyptian winged discs into downward curving emblems of protection. Their mosaics didn't just predate Roman flaws, they anticipated Byzantine tessellated geometries by 2 millennia. Even their imperfect sculptures, like the asymmetrical Lion Gate guardians, reveal a deliberate rejection of static symmetry in favor of dynamic tension, a philosophy that would resurface in Etruscan and later Hellenistic art. What makes this legacy most astonishing is its ghostly persistence. Long after Hattusa's fall, Hittite motifs haunted successor states. The Neo-Hittite kingdoms carved storm gods mimicking Tahunza's stance. Phrygian textiles echoed Yazılıkaya's celestial patterns. Even biblical descriptions of Hittite treaties preserved their diplomatic formulae. That granulation jewelry technique, it didn't die with the empire. It traveled through Phoenician traders to the Etruscans, eventually shaping Renaissance goldsmithing. The Hittites achieved what few civilizations manage. Their collapse wasn't an end, but a diffusion, their innovations dissolving into the cultural groundwater of the ancient world, resurfacing in places and forms we're only beginning to trace. In the end, these artifacts did more than fill museum cases. They shattered the artificial walls we'd built between great and minor civilizations. The Hittites emerged not as Egypt's rivals or Mesopotamia's mimics, but as linchpins of a globalized Bronze Age, their legal systems, art, and technologies stitching together 3 continents. To study their artifacts isn't just archaeology, it's seeing the ancient world through their eyes, recognizing a legacy written not in conquests alone, but in the quiet revolutions of a scribe's stylus, a jeweler's furnace, and a diplomat's silver blade. From the silent guardians of the Lion Gate to the celestial mathematics woven into Yazılıkaya's stones, these 25 artifacts have rewritten history, not with grand declarations, but through whispers in clay, glints of bronze, and the stubborn endurance of ideas. Each fragment we've uncovered is a breadcrumb leading us deeper into the labyrinth of the Hittite mind. Diplomats who turned treaties into sacred bonds, queens who wielded seals like swords, artisans who encoded cosmic truth into mosaic tiles. Yet for every mystery solved the Treaty of Kadesh's meticulous clauses, the Sarissa Axe's oath-bound names, a dozen more linger. What curses lie unread in the untranslated tablets of Ortakuri? What songs might still hum from the strings of those shattered lyres depicted on the Husainid vase? The Hittites built their empire to last, but not in the ways we expected. Their monuments weren't just stone and metal, they were systems. A dam that married hydrology to theology, a bureaucracy so meticulous it tracked locust plagues down to the last grain, a visual language flexible enough to speak to Egyptian pharaohs and Mycenaean warlords alike. Even in collapse, they left blueprints. That granulation technique from Alaca Höyük, it echoes in Etruscan workshops centuries later. the solar symbology of Arina's disk. It pulses through Neo-Hittite carvings long after Hattusa burned. Perhaps the greatest artifact is absence itself, the gaps in our knowledge that beckon like uncharted roads. Museums from Ankara to Berlin guard troves of unstudied tablets, their cuneiform still waiting for decipherment. Rural mounds across Anatolia hide unexcavated palaces. One farmer's plough might yet unveil the next Yazılıkaya. And who knows what lies beneath the waters of ancient trade routes, where shipwrecks could hold diplomatic gifts or mercantile records that reshape our maps. So walk into your nearest museum's Bronze Age wing and stand before these objects not as relics but as open doors. Trace the grooves of a Hittite scribe's stylus on a replica tablet, or challenge a friend to decode the animal masks on the Bittic vase. History isn't just found, it's fought for, debated, and sometimes imagined. The Hittites themselves would have agreed, their entire world, you balanced on the tension between what's known and what's felt. As their sun goddess Arina was praised in one surviving prayer, you rise not just in the sky but in the spaces between words where the wise listen and the brave dare to question. Let that be our compass as the excavation continues.